Well, we are back in full effect. And I
Yeah, we are.
loved last episode. Was so
my
amazing.
gosh.
I just have to say, Liv was amazing. And I feel like she really kicked us into gear with the topic that we have today and just diving into talking about like
Well, the regrowth, the
fight or flight.
reformation, and get that plan going, it's perfect for the new year also.
Yes.
Just rolling into this January.
I just have to say again, New Year's, it just feels so amazing. 2026, here we
Yay.
are. We're here for it.
Yes. Best year ever.
Yes,
Coming.
it is. Oh my gosh.
Okay, but we're actually here to talk about a more serious topic than what we've had on, I guess, the last couple episodes.
Yes.
And that is stalking.
Stalkers. Oh my
Stalkers.
gosh.
And, we're going to hear some stories today, some vulnerable stories, and it's going to be a little bit difficult maybe.
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I mean, I feel like anybody that's ever been stalked, Liv talked about it, two different types of situations where she got out of it. You know, one of them was
Yeah.
at the grocery store. She was going during the pandemic, and that was just like instinct kicked in for her. She immediately noticed that somebody was kind of following her around, even though that was a one-time incident. But the other one that she had mentioned, which was
Yes.
the ex-boyfriend, and she noticed that he was following her, things like that. So it's just like, wow, that's stalking is so like it's real, and it happens to people more than it happens to women more than we know it does.
Yes, as a matter of fact. So this month, January is actually the Stalking Awareness Month.
I cannot
National.
believe that.
Yes, and according to the Department of Justice, 1 in 3 women have been stalked. 1 in 3. And now
Wow.
I did some research before the show, and I saw upwards of 1 in 5 women, and then we're talking about in a lifetime, the span of
Yeah.
a lifetime. But 1 in 12 was the highest number that I saw. But the Department of Justice has on their website that 1 in 3 women get stalked in their lifetime.
Wow, that's crazy. I know, I mean, you had mentioned that that kind of happened to you before, but even what Liv talks about is like women are not trained to like make a scene. They're not trained to, confront somebody. They're trained to kind of be quiet and submissive. And that's when you're teaching that, that's femininity and that's who you're supposed to be, soft and feminine. Like when you're in those type of situations, what are you supposed to be then? Should you be confrontational? Should you, this is about your safety. So is that what you should turn into?
Well, I think definitely, the first thing is definitely listen to that intuition.
Yes.
Because I don't think, at least from all the times that I recall, my intuition has never failed me. If I have followed it, it has
Yes.
only led me in the right path. So I think one of the things we learned from Liv is like follow that intuition, listen to that intuition. But she had the second part of that, which was to actually act
on it.
and do something
Take
about
action.
it. She took action, and she didn't get aggressive, but she did make it known, like, this is what I'm going to do if this does not stop, and it worked for her in that situation.
Yeah.
But I know that you have a very personal situation. You have legitimately been, because we're going to talk about a lot of things, different levels of stalking, different types of stalking. Now we have cyber stalking,
Oh my gosh.
It's
Cyber stalking is crazy.
whole thing. But you had a situation that was pretty serious.
Yes. So my situation happened when I was 19 years old. I mean, I was pretty young. And even when we talked with Liv, I mean, you really think about your front cortex of your brain is just not developed,
No.
your decision making is not there, all of those things. So I was 19 years old in a relationship, and this relationship did turn it turned abusive, right? And I found myself looking to get out of this relationship. And once I finally did, it did turn into stalking. No matter where I was, if I was at work, it was stalking. If I was at the grocery store, at the mall, it was just
my
like
gosh.
stalking the whole time. It was like a full-time job for this person to go out of their way to follow me around. And mind you, this is even before cell phones,
Yes.
GPS. Like this person had to physically wait for me to get home and then wait for me to leave my house. And I didn't have like a routine or anything. So it's
my
like
gosh.
you
Yeah.
had to be sitting there waiting for me to do all these things.
And how long did this go on?
This went on for, I would say, for 6 months.
Oh my
It went on for
gosh.
6 months, but so it started out as stalking, and then it was just like, okay, this is annoying. This is weird. At first, obviously, it was scary, right?
Yeah.
And then it became like weird and annoying, and then I was just like, and then I became used to it, I guess, because the person wasn't doing anything. But then I did start seeing somebody, and then that's when the whole
Escalated.
it escalated. Yeah. So then it was like,
So you had that initially, you had that tone like, I'm not going to escalate the situation. If I just kind of like
Let it go.
acquiesce, I
Yes.
just let this happen, nothing actual bad's going to happen. Is that kind of how it was?
no. Well, I mean, you think about it, when you are in an abusive relationship already, you kind of know what triggers the other person into those rage episodes, So I felt like it was better for me. And at the time I had 2 children. And so I felt like at 19 years old, mom of 2, living on my own, I really felt like the safest thing for me to do would not be to provoke anything or to address anything, I guess, kind of like let it die off, And honestly, I was hoping that he would find another girlfriend or, move on, in that sense. But because he didn't have anybody else to latch on to,
Right.
the focus was on me. So
And did he suffer from any type of mental health issues or anything like that?
no, not that he was diagnosed with, but when you do peel back the layers of any human being, there's obviously like childhood traumas. And then you look at like layers of, did they have both parents in the home? What was their childhood like? And, honestly, the upbringing wasn't very good. It was very physical for him. Physical abuse, things like that. So, and then also didn't grow up with lots of family around him. So it was like he didn't really care about the elements of family or the respect either. Like, I respect you as a human being.
Right.
I respect you because we're in a relationship. Like, those elements were missing,
So then when you moved on from the relationship, that's when the possessiveness kicked in even further, and that's when it escalated?
Yes, definitely. So there was a time where I had already been in this relationship for almost a year, actually. So this was 6 months, then it escalated, and then a year later, so a whole year later, in this full-blown relationship now, and this person waited for me to get to a location that they knew I was going to be there. Just by coincidence, was talking to a friend, and they're like, "Oh yeah, Jackie's going to come by." And then he's like, "Oh, that's cool. What time is she going to come?" And then they told the time. I didn't know, and they didn't know what was going on. And I feel like that's a really big thing too, like to make people aware of what your situation is, so that they aren't giving that information to that person, So I get to the location, and as soon as I go to get out of the car, I see this person. I'm like, "Oh my, you in the car?" And the guy was banging on your door, right? You kind of froze. And so, like, this was the first time out of all the times that he was following me around everywhere that he actually made, contact with me. So I was just like, oh my God. And immediately that emotion or that feeling back to when we were actually in a relationship, that abuse like kicked in, and it was like, oh my God, I kind of like froze and got tense. And he's just yelling at me, like yelling so hard where spit is flying out of his mouth, hitting the window. And I'm just like in the car, and the car's a stick. So I'm like, I'm afraid to even start it up, do all this, because I'm like, I won't even get in gear probably, So I'm thinking of all this. And then all of a sudden it gets quiet, and he jumps on top of the truck. I'm in a truck. He jumps on top and starts smashing the roof in. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm like freaking out. I mean, I feel like there's no way where I can go. There's nobody even on the street. The street is like dead. Nobody's on the street walking. Like, somebody walk a dog right now,
Yes.
But nothing was going on. And then all of a sudden it stopped. The shaking of the truck stopped. Everything stopped. And I have my daughter in the car. She's
Oh my gosh.
1 year old at the time, or maybe like 2 years old, I think now. And I'm covering her because I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then it stops. So I'm like, I look around to see, where did he go? What happened? Did he run away? And as soon as I looked out the passenger or the driver's side window, I looked straight at the window, and I don't know what happened, but glass just came flying into my eyes. And then the person that I was there visiting finally heard everything that was going on.
Oh my God. So he actually broke your window, your driver's side window?
Yeah. And then shards of glass came shooting into my eyes. And it was just like the craziest moment because I just remember thinking like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like he's going to kill me.
Oh my God.
And then he's trying to open the door, like put his hand in and unlock the door now at this point. And the people that I was visiting, it was a bunch of girls, and he was like, they came down and they're yelling at him. And they're like, what are you doing? Oh my God. Yeah. And they're just like, get away. We're calling the police right now. They're on their way and all this stuff. And I just remembered saying, get my daughter out, get my daughter out, you know? And they were like, oh my gosh, we're not going to leave you. And I'm like, no, get her out, please.
Yes, don't worry about me.
Like, don't worry about me.
Yes.
Cause I'm like, I don't know what he's going to do to her. Like, you know? And so then as they're pulling me out of the car, we're walking towards their apartment, and you have to walk up these flight of stairs, and he's behind me, shoving me and saying, that's right, bitch. That's right, bitch. God. That's what you get. And I was like, and it was all over because at that point he wanted to give me something back and I didn't want it. I was like, no, just keep it. It's fine. And that's what triggered him because he said, oh, now you think you don't want something from me. Now you got it all or something like that, you know? So it's like, okay. And then getting up into the room, and it's just like these girls are screaming, and it was so crazy because I remember just being so calm, not screaming, not yelling. And then they're yelling in the police, and they're like, oh my God, and they're screaming and crying. And I'm like, give me the phone. And I'm like, here's the address that we're at. And I was like, this is the person's name. Yes. And I was like, my daughter's with me. And I just gave them like the whole rundown. Wow. And they were just like screaming, running around in circles in the apartment. Like, oh my God, what do we do?
Freaking out.
And I'm like, can you lock the door?
You were the one with the calmness. You were the one.
And I can't see because the glass is in both of my eyes.
Oh my gosh.
And so 5 hours of surgery, eye surgery, they had to bring in a surgeon from another city. And 5 hours of surgery, they were like, you are so lucky. You're a hairline away from being blind. Hairline. I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. And I just feel like, man, God has always been on my side, I feel like, you know, even in any type of situation. So, and my daughter lost her 2 fingernails because glass got in there and they had to remove her fingernails. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so, ugh.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe
So stalking is real.
I cannot believe that you went through that.
Well, the one thing that I always reflect on, because this happened in 2001. So this is 2001. I'm 19 years old. And at that time, I remember back in I think it was 1994, I remember being a teenager and watching this whole court case and the verdict of O.J. Simpson and Nicole Brown Simpson. And I just remember thinking like that. And they really tried to portray her as like, oh, she was kind of like not asking for it, but she wasn't living a saintly life. Right. You know? And I just remember thinking, well, how is a victim supposed to be? You know, like, are they supposed to be a saint? You know, and what is that response supposed to look like, you know? And so it was a interesting time, but it was like I had that awareness also. And thankfully, I know this is so random, but like Denise Brown, her sister, went and toured the country, and she talked about advocating for victims and stalkers and abusive relationships. And so there was that minimal knowledge about it, you know, but it wasn't like mainstream, and it wasn't like something that everybody talked about. Like, you got to be aware of this, guys. And
no, definitely not.
Yeah.
And then you had that. I mean, it's always been a thing, but the victim shaming, like what you alluded to earlier about what was going on in that case, but that's always a thing. And that's why women don't want to necessarily come forward or seek out any help or protection, because they know that they're going to be victimized again just for being a victim for nothing they did, you know, on their own. And that's horrible.
No, it really is. And I think, you know, really when you think about that situation, I look back at my 19-year-old self and I say, God, that was like a horrible time for you. But I also look back at that 19-year-old girl that said, you know, in that position, I was kind of like had the option and or the luxury, I would say, to stay at home with my 2 kids, you know, and that relationship was able to support me while I stayed home. But I'd have to say, after that relationship and that experience, it really turned me into like where I got to be today, you know, which is, I've always had ambition.
Right.
I've always had like a drive, you know, but it kicked it into like high gear. And I would say even at one point, even to hyper high gear, independence, hyper high gear, you know, where it's like, I'm never going to let anybody support me ever again. I'm never going to be on the whim of someone paying for my housing, paying for food, paying for nothing, you know, and that relationship changed me from that point on.
So, because that was the dynamic that you had with this gentleman.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And so, and then we were even talking about it in like 2 episodes ago, where it was like, where do you relinquish like that control or that power, you know, when you've been so independent so long? And it's like, for me, I would say independence, I don't feel like was really a choice. It wasn't an option. It was more of like, this is how I was surviving at that time, you know, in 19, 20, 21. So, and even, you know, made me go into like becoming a traffic officer and choosing that position and that career.
Wow.
Because I wanted to be surrounded with police, and that was going to be the friends that I had and, you know, carried. So I needed to feel protected in that sense, not so much like from a new relationship, but like the people that I held company with.
I can't believe that happened to you. That is crazy. And so did that evolve into a court case? Was he tried, convicted, and all of these things?
Well, even before that had happened, So before that had happened, actually, it was starting to escalate a little bit. Before I got into the relationship with the new relationship, he had shown up at my house, broke into the house because he obviously knew how to get in, right?
Yes.
And so the neighbors were like, hey, I think somebody's in your house. And they were on like super high alert, knew what my situation was. I was a single mom, and I told them what happened in my relationship. So they were always very conscious. Well, hilarious. I moved next door to my parents. So so I live next door to my parents.
There's nobody that's going to be looking out for you more than your parents.
But also my other neighbor was somebody that I grew up with my whole entire life.
Yeah.
So, you know, they were the ones that had called me and said, I think somebody's in your house. And I was like, okay, don't go over there. I'm going to just send the police. Right. The police went in, and he was in my closet with a knife. I mean, I don't know if he planned on using that on me, but he had it with him, you know, so in my closet, in my room. So it was like, that was a really scary time. And I also see how I would throw myself into work, you know, and I would take on more hours than I needed to, because it wasn't the financial stability more. It was more of like, I just wanted to have that distraction, you know?
Absolutely. I mean, I can definitely see why you would want to do that. And I mean, I guess, you know, this is such an important topic, and obviously we always want to be able to provide resources and advice to our, you know, viewers on this. And I guess, you know, you have said several times you were so young, like obviously you're a different person. Like, what would you tell your younger self at your time now back then? You know, what advice would you give to your younger self about how you dealt with the situation? Maybe what you feel like you did correctly, that's, you know, or what you should have done, or what would your advice to your younger self be?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a good question. I feel like my younger self, I felt so afraid, I feel like, because I knew what he was doing to me. And I just felt like, gosh, I would never want somebody to be hurt because of a decision that I made in a relationship, you know?
Right.
And so like, I didn't tell anybody what was going on. And it was like trying to keep that from people, or I began to distance myself, and they thought, oh, he's keeping you from the family. No, I was distancing myself because I didn't want people to know what was going on, and I didn't want them to like discover,
Right.
and then confront him. And then, oh my gosh, so and so
Something
got
happened to
murdered
them, and
because
then,
of me,
yes.
So I was just like, I felt like I could handle the situation, and I felt like I knew how to like be quiet at certain times, or, so I just felt like those were the things. Plus, I was, like I said, a mom of 2 kids. Like, what was I going to do? I had no money. I had no job. I had no career. I had no college degree. Like, what was I going to do?
And so would you tell somebody who is in this situation now to seek out help?
Yes, I would definitely say yes, because when I finally did, all I did was delay the time, because I actually did leave the person, and I did have to face all those things that I thought were so big and overshadowed me prior, a year prior. So I should have left when I saw these signs and when the things first started happening. But I think you also tell yourself like, oh, well, this was one time, or, oh, maybe I made him really mad, and it's just like, I mean, this is my first time living with somebody. This is my first
Yes,
time
you're so
like
young. My gosh.
cohabitating with another male, So I'm like, I don't know. My dad and my grandfather were not like this.
Right.
So maybe it's me. Maybe I'm doing something wrong here, And so like that's what I was thinking at 19. And I don't think at 19 or any age that's a problem for you to solve. That is not a problem for you to solve.
No.
If a man is putting their hands on you, if a man does not have respect for you, that is not your problem to solve. You are not doing anything. So
it's just so difficult because all of the shame and humiliation that comes from these incidents. I in the district attorney's office when I was in ADA, I was in the domestic violence unit for a while.
oh wow. Okay, I
And
did not know this about
lots
you.
of stories. I couldn't handle it. I get too personally attached to
Yes.
people and women especially. And so for me, I couldn't stay there a long time. But, just to hear the stories, the fear, the shame, because like you said, when back in the day when this was happening to you, you really had to take overt efforts, like tailing someone, following them, like,
Yes.
especially if you don't have a normal routine. And the links that people went to was just insane.
I can honestly say, and again, my situation just is very unique because it's not like people have this solution for themselves. But because I did end up working for the city of San Jose as a traffic officer, I did have a lot of friends that were police officers. So when I would call the police, it would be actual people I knew and that knew me. And so they're like, oh, who's this guy? F this guy. We're going to get him,
Right.
And so they took like an extra approach about it because they love me, and they
Yes.
were like, you don't deserve this. And they knew my kids, And so it was just like, they felt like they had to protect me, So it was just like an extra layer of help at that point. And so like that knife situation where they found him, that was the day that my friend that I worked with was like, no, you're getting a restraining order. And
Yes.
he even stayed the night with me with 2 other friends. And he was like, we're going to stay the night, blah, blah, blah. And they took him to jail. But as soon as he got out of jail, he came right back to my house. And luckily they were there. So, so I was just like, oh my God, this is crazy.
We're going to end. But that's
Oh,
okay.
gosh.
Here we go. Buzzer
What?
time.
Wait.
I feel like Andy has a question too.
I'm treading lightly on my questions here and my jokes.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
At what point did you know? I mean, of course, when it got violent, but did you know at some point before that, like you had to get out of this? And then at that point, like, I guess for your family, there was no going back. Like, they were like, yo, you got to get out of this. And your friends saw it got so bad. Were you still like, oh, this is not going to happen again? Or maybe, or was it like the community coming together and being like, hey, was it you? Was it the community? Was it all of the above that got you, that helped, or that supported you in getting out of the situation?
That is such a loaded question, because another layer to this situation was I was heavily involved in church at the time. I grew up in church, so it was just like all those beliefs, which are you don't get a divorce, you work things out. And so like that was like heavily ingrained in me. Like you don't get a divorce. Nobody in my family had ever gotten a divorce. So it was just like, I'm going to be the one to destroy my family. Like
black sheep.
I am the black sheep. Like, oh my God, this is horrible. So it was just like, for me, I felt like I already got pregnant at 16 years old. And now I have like this failed marriage that's about to populate, you know, and it's just like, to me, those just seem so overwhelming at 19 years old. They seem like very overwhelming. And I felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to go to church anymore. People are going to disown me. And at that time, when the news did finally break, and I was just like, I'm at my breaking point. I cannot do this anymore. I don't care what anybody thinks, you know. And I did finally make that move. It was incredible to see, like, even my church community, my family. Obviously, my family would never have appreciated that, me staying that long, because they're just not like that. But my church community was just like, no, oh my gosh, he's banned from this church, from this region. Like if we see him on the streets, like people were just like really took a big offense to it. So that was helpful. So it became like a community thing, along with even my coworkers. They were like, is that him? They would get in their car and they drive and go see, because he would stalk me at work, you know? And so they would drive off trying to go catch and see if that was him stalking me.
And how long would you say that fear followed you? You know?
Well, after he had done that to my eyes, there was like a big search for him. And he ended up going to Mexico. And so I think he stayed there for probably about 6 years. And then he had moved on with his life. He got some beautiful girlfriend. I mean, she was just amazingly beautiful. And I'm like, wow, I hope that doesn't happen to you. But it didn't. And he was a whole different person with her, you know, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, talking about reporting it and going forward with charges and whatever resources there are, only 1 in 3 women who this happens to reports it. And, you know, what does that say as well? Because how can we make any difference and headway in this if we're not reporting it? But at the same time, you can see the reasons why.
Well, I think that also is that's hard to answer, because yeah, I feel like I have a friend that kind of went through the same thing I did around the same time, but she went in a whole opposite direction. Like she thought if she like went crazy that it would make him back off, you know? And so she ended up going batshit crazy on him. But he was really the abuser, like for a long time, like her tormentor for years, you know, and they had kids together. And because she never reported any of the black eyes, the broken arm, like nothing, she reported nothing. And when she ended up going batshit crazy, defending herself, she went to jail.
Oh my gosh.
She went to jail and he pressed charges. And so I feel like even when it comes to the law sees it like, oh, well, you were equally combative, because that's what they even said in the Nicole Simpson case, which was, oh, they just had a very toxic relationship. You know, they were both abusive towards each other. And it's like
tit for tat. And then if you haven't reported it, then you're not going to have those reports to back up your story. And you're always at a disadvantage because, like I said, it's like the victim is the one who's on trial. You're the one who's getting it instead of.
Well, it goes back to, you have to be the perfect victim. What is the perfect victim? Oh, she didn't, she's not crying enough. Or when I asked her the question, she wasn't like, nervous system wasn't kicking in. Like, I think when you get to a certain stage of like abuse, or when fear, it doesn't become fear anymore. It becomes like fuel. That's, I feel like, what happened for me. Like fear became fuel to progress in life, fuel to leave that 19-year-old behind and say, what does the future look like for me? How do I now build my family from this? What did I learn from this? And I'm telling you today, because of that incident, I am I have been financially driven because of that. And again, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but you know,
Part of your story.
it's part of my
Got
story.
you where you are now.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and I think that's an important aspect. And I mean, we've talked about this in lots of different ways for, all the baddies being independent, and financial is a huge aspect of that. And, I had a client that I represented on a basically a tractor trailer wreck that she was in. And it was very clear to me that she was in an abusive relationship. Because her husband would come with her. He would never want to leave her alone. He would always want to be in meetings with her, which we have client confidentiality. And if that is broken, then whatever is said, the other side can find out about.
Yeah.
So it's something, and it's obviously something we take
you
very
don't play around
seriously.
with. Yeah.
Yes. And so, it's like, no, buddy, get out of here. Like, you can't be in the room. Like, this is my client. I need to have a conversation with her. My client, I needed to speak to her alone, but her husband would not, tried not to allow it or whatever. And anyway, we went forward with her trial, and it just was a very heavy situation, and she would never discuss it. But it's just one of those things, like, you just knew. And I always felt so, so bad for her in that situation. And the reason she couldn't leave was because she didn't have the financial backing to do it. But I will never forget that once we got her case settled, we got her money in, she got everything, we finished her case and finalized it. About 30 days after, she came by the office and she had left, and she looked like a completely different person. And just the sheer, just not joy, but just relief and beauty. And because she was the most sweet woman, caring. She was a caregiver. So what she'd done her whole life since she had come from Mexico was to be a caregiver to children, to be a nanny, and that's what she had done her whole life. So you knew she had that mothering, loving, just persona.
Yeah.
And she finally, and so you could just see all of that light coming back in her eyes. And it was just like, to me, it was just like the most beautiful thing. But she had gotten that financial independence, and that's how she was finally able to leave the situation.
Gosh, I think it was like episode 5, we had talked about that kind of, in a sense, is like, Jacqueline actually had brought that up, which is, are you dating for financial reasons, for stability, whatever? And it's like, nowadays, women that are financially secure and stable, they're dating for character. They're dating for personality. They're dating,
or they're choosing not to date at all.
Yes, or they're choosing not to date at all. And it really changes and levels the playing field when it comes to like what men think they can get away with. Those type of men, And it's so crazy. Like, I remember I was at a conference and I met this incredible woman. And it's like, I have this radar now because I've gone through it,
Oh, yeah.
So it's like, I can always tell and spot when somebody is like, has that type of situation going on at home. And I remember I kind of like brought something up to her, and she was just like, oh, okay, blah, 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 and didn't really like bite on it. But then like a few months later, it was just like, it came out, and it was just like, whoa, okay, this was worse than what I had even imagined it. But you see the signs, and they're like a well-off couple, very, very well off, like tens of millions of well off,
Oh yeah,
and that was happening. But she also had no money of her own either. So
that is tough.
So I feel like that is weaponized in relationships a lot. And I feel like when I was 19, I said, that's never going to be weaponized for me ever again.
Absolutely. And so we're going to put up, after this episode, some resources on our socials. There are several acts, monies from the Violence Against Women Act, funding, and other resources that we are going to put up, because we want for any woman who's going through this to have some resources at their discretion. And part of that is going to be financial. A part of that is going to be, your local district attorney's office. There is the Department of Justice has a great resource tool where you can go in and look at all the various aspects of resources for this specific subject matter of stalking.
Yeah.
So we are going to put all that up because we want you to have those valuable resources at your fingertips.
And stalking can turn into murder.
It is very real situation. Homicide partner, intimate partners, homicide from a stalker is very prevalent.
There was a time in San Jose where a friend of ours, she was separated from her spouse, who was a San Jose PD police officer, and separated from her spouse with her kids. And he went to her home. The murder-suicide just recently, not too long ago, back in December, there was a case that I had seen in Texas, here in Texas, San Antonio, where a 15-year-old boy broke up with his girlfriend, and apparently it was so devastating that he brought a gun to school because he was going to kill her. And then he decided that that wasn't enough pain for her, so he went to her house and killed her mother and her 2 siblings. So
yes, I remember that. Horrible.
Yes. So guys, when you see the signs in a relationship, and sometimes it could even feel good, like, oh my gosh, like possessiveness can feel like wanted, you know, or like, oh my gosh, this person loves me so much, especially when you're a teenager, you know. But it's, those are signs. Those are signs that this can turn into something abusive. And if it does turn into abusive, number one, don't be embarrassed to seek help, to talk to people about it. And don't be ashamed, because it's not your fault. That says more about that person than it does about you.
And, you know, let's be honest, a lot of times we're dealing with somebody who is suffering from a mental illness on that other side.
Yeah.
And maybe you saw it and maybe you didn't, but you are dealing with somebody who is not stable, and you need to address it accordingly.
No, really. If I got to have a conversation with my 19-year-old self, I'd be like, girl, we did it. We are a badass.
Absolutely.
Don't let this moment define you, because there's so much more that we're going to accomplish.
Oh,
Let's
and I
do
love
it.
that. Like, don't let this define you.
No, definitely not.
And that fueled your fire. What was it that Liv had said in the last episode? Find your, whatever lights your fire.
Whatever lights your fire, yeah. You know what, though? Honestly, Amber, I have never talked about this situation ever, other than the people that know about it, that were in my life at that time. Like, obviously, my family knows about it too. But kind of like, I feel like I really kind of like just dead stopped that person in my life, like myself, like that 19-year-old person, and completely did like a whole 180 and just went a different direction, you know?
And that kind of brings up one thing, you know, how you dealt with it after the fact. Did you seek any counseling?
No.
Do you wish you would have?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I wish I would have. I went to counseling probably about, probably about 2017, and I did about 3 to 4 years of therapy. And in the therapy, I realized, like, you know, it's so interesting, because how did I get into this relationship? I was raised by my dad. I was raised by men that supported women and championed them and provided resources for them to be successful. Like, that's what I was used to growing up with. But in the therapy, my therapy, they had revealed, like, well, what was your mom's relationship like? Your relationship with your mom, like your real mom, or your birth mom. And I had talked about stories where I had seen such violence happen to my mom, you know, and it was just like where I had to throw my little 7-year-old body in front of her so that she's not getting beat up, you know? And so it's just like, the therapist said something that was very like, whoa, eye-opening, was like, when it comes to that, because that was in your home when you would go visit your mom, even though you didn't live in that environment, you did to some extent become desensitized to it. And I was like, and it's also something that became normalized for you.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow. So even though you're saying like, my dad, like the men in my life are not like this, I don't understand what's happening, but you did see it and you were in it before. So I was like, oh, wow. That's interesting.
Wow, that is.
I'm like, because I wasn't even there that often.
Yeah, but that gave you insight as to why.
Yeah. So the 3 years of therapy did help. And from that, I mean, the decisions that I made romantically changed dramatically.
Mm-hmm.
And so therefore, I'm like, gosh, if I would have done the therapy right after. But I think also too, back in those days, therapy wasn't really
No.
like therapy was so taboo. Like
Yes.
who goes to therapy?
Yes.
Talk about your problems.
Something's wrong with you if you're going to
Yes,
therapy.
mentally, you're
Yes.
cuckoo if you go to therapy, you know? And now I'm like, let's go to therapy, guys. That's like my answer to everything.
Hilarious.
Therapy.
Let's do it.
We got to get a therapist on
I
the
was
show.
going to say that too. I know. Oh
Yes.
no. Ah,
I'm not a therapist, but I
Therapy
did sleep
session?
at. I'm not a therapist, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn last night. So
what?
the commercial. I'm not
Total
this,
random.
but I did.
Oh my
I did
God.
sleep
Wait,
at a Holiday Inn
Holiday
last
Inn
night.
does not sponsor, so we're not talking about them.
No, we're not talking about that. No,
But if you want to.
I think the real piece though that you did bring up was the therapy piece, and I don't think we talk men in particular because he wouldn't have been in that place if he had a strong mental upbringing, and we wouldn't be. And I say we, men and women, wouldn't be in a lot of these places if we had therapy in a lot of ways. And that's very interesting because we weren't able to talk to you weren't able to talk to your family, or didn't feel that you were able to talk to your family, didn't feel that you were able to talk to the church, but you were only 19 years old. And I think there has to be a lot of grace given to that.
Definitely.
However, sometimes those institutions allow us to feel a certain way. And like you said, divorce was not a thing, right?
Yes.
And I'm not, I've never been married, but I'm not a fan of divorce, but divorce is a reality. You know, I have a friend that says after every 10 years, you should reset. And
Get married again?
Yeah, get married again every 10 years. So, you know, that I think that's really hard when you have an institution like a church that should support you, yet
Yes.
you don't feel supported. But again, I think it was more of the 19-year-old thing. And you did see some things. You saw some things growing up that normalized the behavior, you know, and maybe not a bunch, but we don't know how that really affects our magula agamagata.
We know what you mean. We know.
Yeah, the brain, right? The frontal cortex. So,
Well, I can definitely say that fear, what I had said earlier, fueled me. But I think that fuel and that fear combination, it really introduced me to myself, like who I was becoming, you know? So, and it was just like very cautious and aware of who I'm around, what I'm doing. Just like what Liv said, very intuitive, you know, very, very intuitive. And I think when you're in those situations, you become very like a human psychology, right? It's like you see a twitch, you see a certain movement, you're very aware of those facial expressions, things like that, because it's like a fight or flight. When you see a certain expression, like this is going to happen, you know?
And having been through this, what have you talked to your own daughters about in regards to paying attention, intuition, the types of things that can happen? I mean,
My kids are crazy. They definitely are not going to be the kids that ever get abused. I was like, well, what if this happens? Or, you know, my biggest thing is rape, or
Yes.
like even like they go to parties or college, you know, not knowing your alcohol
surroundings,
limit, you know,
somebody slipping something in your drink.
or even friends. Like you see like these girls that are luring their friends into traps of like, you know, these, not sorority, what's the other one? The guy fraternity situations, you know, and it's like, that's scary to me. Like these are people you thought were your friends and they're luring to your, you know, to a situation. So I always talk to them about that, and they're like, oh, I would feel bad for the guy. They're like, I'll call my dad or I'll call so-and-so. And I'm like, you wouldn't be embarrassed to tell us? Or no, I'd be like, go get him. Like, okay, got it.
That's awesome.
So they're like, yeah, nobody's messing with me.
And going back on what Jacqueline was saying about, you know, the therapy. I mean, back then it was also this huge stigma, like we were talking about earlier, the therapy. But, you know, and I've dealt with a lot of families. You know, it's kind of a cultural thing as well for a lot of families. It is a male thing as well. I've had clients who definitely I have encouraged them to seek counseling, but because of
Yeah.
machismo
counsel.
attitudes and other issues, they won't allow it. And unfortunately, I have seen it develop into suicide.
Yeah.
When that hasn't happened because a child hasn't received the counseling that they needed from
The
an incident,
adequate
or a woman or a
outlet.
man as well. But we have got to do better to, take away that stigma from the counseling therapy aspect, because people need that.
No, they really do. And for me, I'm just like, you cannot let this situation like this, you have to be able to evolve from the situation. And so if that's therapy, I encourage everybody. I'm so like upset with myself that I didn't get therapy earlier, or that I didn't like, I don't know. I just felt like we live in a different time now.
It's a different time.
We live in a
don't
totally
give
different
yourself
time.
the grace. I mean, absolutely. You were a child.
Yeah.
Basically, you were a child.
Yeah.
Still.
And I definitely am like, I push my kids to therapy. I'm like I said, therapy is like a cup of coffee. Let's go have our cup of coffee, guys. Like I'm all about therapy all day long. And I don't see it as something that like you didn't have the power to get through this, so now you got to go to a therapist. Like I don't think that's accurate. We were not born with or given motherhood manuals. We had to figure that out ourselves. And sometimes I say, by the grace of God, I'm doing an okay job. And then some days I'm like, damn, I fucked up, And I'm like, Jesus, give me grace here, But it's the same thing with our lives. We have to be able to process what's happened to us. And if you can't process that, all you're doing is brushing it under the rug. And eventually that pile is going to come flying back out at you.
At some point. And, going back on the resources for this counseling, there are counseling resources and for victims. And so again, we'll put this up on our resource board.
Also, so like I had benefits because I worked for the city, but back then therapy was a luxury. That was not a benefit. Today, therapy is a benefit. And actually you pay a lesser, like, I think it's like $10. Whereas if you go to your doctor, it's like $30 for your copay, so it's less expensive than going to the actual doctor to get some therapy, process your feelings, process those thoughts. Don't get back into relationships like that, because the therapy can help you understand how you got to that point and how you selected that partner.
Have you had to help any other woman out of a situation like this as well?
I did, yes. And it's so crazy because I think I really shut the door to that part of my life. Like, I mean, shut it, nailed it, deadbolted it, everything. And I really, really did not ever talk about it ever again. Wow. And like randomly people that knew about it would say, but I mean, you're talking about 23 years ago that happened.
Yeah.
So that was a very long 2 decades ago, 2.5 decades ago. So it's a chapter in my life that I never really opened back up. And I'm so glad that I'm able to talk about it here, because I also did feel that stigma of like, if anybody ever knew that about me, what are they going to think about my career or about the decision making that I'm doing for my business or whatever, So it was just, I felt like, out of sight, out of mind. If I don't talk about it, then I'll always be seen as the person I am, putting in the value of work that I do, And that's, I think, what I wanted to be seen as. Sounds crazy. It sounds crazy, but yeah. And I feel like by talking about it, I could have helped a lot more people, a lot. And there are some women that I have talked to, but not from my personal story,
right?
But more of like as a strong woman and as a independently financial woman, like here's what we can do, and you got to do this and save up money here and do this, and this is how you're going to get out of that situation, like. But I don't think I've ever really shared that story.
Well, as your friend and business partner, I thank you for sharing your story, and I really do think that it is going to impact other women and do exactly what we're hoping that it will do, which is take away that stigma and let women know that it is okay, and it's okay to talk about it, and there is no shame at all.
Well, in 2002, J-Lo came out with a movie called Enough, And that was wild. People were sending me that video. Like, they're like, you got to go watch this movie. It's J-Lo. She's enough. That's you. That's you. And I was like, oh my God. So I love that. I was like, oh my God. I felt like that was me. I had a go bag.
That's crazy.
So yeah.
Did you really have a go bag?
I really had a go bag.
Yeah,
That's how I escaped.
That's crazy.
No, so I'm curious.
He didn't hit the buzzard a lot this time. Just didn't want to touch the subject.
How
or what?
rude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, see, that's the scary part. Now the button's gonna be like, oh, he's being rude. Not like you all sound like that.
No, I
but-
said how rude because you didn't hit the
Oh,
button.
because I did press the button. Okay. I know you said it changed you, right?
Yes.
But like, is there a before Jacqueline and then an after Jacqueline with that moment? Like, is there like this like definitive like, I'm fucking different now?
I'm better than that before that moment?
No, like there was Jacqueline before that moment, and then there's Jacqueline after that moment. So Jacqueline before the relationship and Jacqueline after can you even recognize the Jacqueline before what happened as compared to the Jacqueline now? I'm saying like 19, 20, 21, 22 years old.
Yeah. No, I get it. Okay. So the before Jacqueline, before that relationship, I feel like I've always been ambitious, always been like somebody that wanted to go somewhere in life. And then I had kids at a very young age, and it was just like, okay, I don't know how to do that with having kids and then not having money either, and so that was like a big thing. And I feel like after that situation, I just felt like there's no excuse to not have money, like I have to figure this out. There's no excuse to have money. And it's even to who I am today. It's like, you don't have money to pay child support. Like, find the money because that is supporting your children, And so like, that's how I was hard on myself. It's like, I never want to be in that situation again. So I'm always going to find the money, And I feel like a lot of our conversations for women, at least, it comes down to financial independence and having access, and that I feel like even women that get into these situations, you said, have I ever helped other women? I've talked to other women, helped other women, and it all came down to financial independence. They had no job, they had no money, they were a stay-at-home mom for 10 years, and so because
how can you pack a bag, move? How can you get an apartment? How can you do all of these things if you don't have the funds?
Yeah.
You can't. So yes, that's what it boils down to, unfortunately.
Yeah. So it, again, I feel like you had mentioned it earlier, we're going to provide like hotlines, numbers, links to take a look at certain things and information resources, but also it comes down to your community. And if you don't have a community, again, I feel like that's what we champion, is bringing women together to create that cohesiveness with women, that if you're in a position, something like that, like there's all of us, let's brainstorm, let's figure out the best way for you to get out of a situation, or how to escalate your financial independence, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And please, if you're in this situation, don't be that person who's going to be like, this will never happen to me.
No.
Just as the statistics don't lie, this happens to women all the time, and we don't want you to be any statistic.
Yes. Don't be a statistic.
Yes.
And don't be embarrassed if you are feeling like you are a statistic. So say something. Do something about your situation by saying something.
Yes. And women do this too. I actually had a client who came to me as a divorce client, and she actually got charged with stalking her husband.
Yes.
You're talking about, and I can't speak to anything, specific that she told to me in confidence, but I can speak to what is in public record, and that is following someone, ramming a vehicle. So this is not just a thing that happens to women only. Women also do this.
Yeah.
And I think the statistics say something like 1 in 9 men have also been stalked. And we haven't even gotten into the cyber aspect of today's realm of stalking, because it is insane.
What are those called? Troll accounts?
Yes.
People are stalking you through troll accounts, and they're not even like, you don't even know that it's that person, but it's them, and they're just using a different account or under a different guise. Crazy.
Yes. So now that the stalkers have even more tools at their disposal to follow you, to see what you're up to even make comments, posts, they're just humiliating you online,
Yeah.
even to a bigger audience. It's horrible.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And I think like 2 years ago, the Violence Against Women's Act finally updated the laws on stalking to include cyber stalking, and really made bigger fines and also allow for a civil action now, because we also have the dissemination of the photographs of women or men
Yeah.
without their permission. So they added that as well to part of it, and which is great because that's horrible as well.
Yeah. Well, again, seek out the help. Look in the link, go into the description, let's get you some resources. Comment to us, send this episode to anybody that you know that has experienced this, or even if they haven't told you that they're experiencing it, maybe you feel like you're sensing that this is happening to somebody you know. Send this to them and just be like, hey, oh my God, look at this. This really caught my attention. You don't have to say it caught my attention because I feel like this is happening to you. But send this out to people. And if this is happening to you, feel free to reach out to us in our DMs. And, we'd love to have a conversation with you about this.
And please, if you have any advice, I don't profess to be any expert in this.
No.
If you have any advice that you feel that other women need to know about this issue, please also reach out to us, DM us, and send us that information so that we can share it with everyone.
Yeah. And that concludes our session for today.
Be
Therapy,
safe,
please.
baddies. Yes. Coffee is therapy. Therapy is
Coffee
therapy.
is therapy. Hey, friends, having coffee with friends, that's therapy too, guys.
Yes,
so
that is.
I mean, if that's all you have at your availability. So take a look at therapy, though. It is accessible nowadays. And I would say take advantage of what's accessible to you. Don't, what do we say in the last episode or 2 episodes ago? We said, don't try to take everything on your own. Like outsource. You need resources. Therapy is a resource. And even if you're not going through this, like, what if you're going through something with your kids, or you're just like, I'm a horrible parent, but you're doing everything you can in your tool belt to be a parent, like get the resources that you need. So whatever your situation is, therapy is an amazing tool. Use it. It's there. It's a resource.
Yes. Alrighty. Be safe out there, baddies.
We love you,
Love
Baddie
you.
Nation. Mwah, mwah.